especially because I've met Robert before, and he said he does know and do a lot of the jiu-jitsu ground.
Oh, he does?
Yeah. Or judo. Judo. The classical judo.
Sure. So he's going to be closer to the actual origin of jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Probably.
Okay.
I don't know, from what I understand, and Robert can answer this, from what I understand, he was actually a qualifier for the Olympic team at one point even.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
He's, very, very quality. And his student Ricky is a Jeet Kune Do guy, but I guess Ricky was mopping the floor with some competitors at a judo meet last year too. So
okay.
He's apparently a pretty good teacher as well, which I'm pretty stoked for. And I don't want to sound awful, but I've never been one for Japanese arts.
I know you don't like Japanese arts.
But I do have a ton of respect for judo.
Yeah.
Just because I see the viability and transferability of it, and the fact that it's a high-paced sport gives you a chance to really do it at full effect, as opposed to something like Aikido that may be a good toolbox but is not necessarily trained the right way.
Okay.
So that's kind of so in that vein, I'm interested to see what Robert's perspective on where ground fighting fits in versus what judo's origins. How much? Because I'm sure if he's at that high level, he probably knows a lot about Kano. I would assume. As a Wing Chun guy, I make it my business to know about it, man. So I'm just assuming.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm not one to bring religion into things, but a lot of people that do the Japanese arts are very big into the Buddhist or Shinto aspects and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But Kano himself was kind of against that, at least inside the training space.
Sure.
And it'd be interesting to see, what.
That's interesting, because a lot of times Chinese martial arts, since you're a Chinese martial artist, they're so married to religion.
Right. With Buddhism or what Southern Chinese do? What's the religion? I can't think of it right now. There's Taoism.
Taoism, yeah. And they were looking for immortality, magic powers,
They're still looking for it.
Of course. So, it's so married. It's interesting when people don't want to connect them, because they're so traditionally intertwined. Even Irish martial arts had magic talents that you had to learn, and some of them were jumping high, but some of them were vanishing. It was so married to esoterical religion.
Even a lot of people don't know anything about Russian martial arts, but Russian martial arts have a lot of really strong ties to either the traditional Slavic folk beliefs or, and this is more common nowadays, Eastern Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah.
And that's Eastern Orthodox Christianity is to Russian martial arts what Catholicism is to the mafia.
Right.
That may be unfair to say, but it gives you kind of the idea.
Well, I really like that. Even on the Absolute bottle, how it has the cross, but then it has the deer. It almost has both layers of religion intertwined.
Right.
And it's an alcohol bottle, so it's Russian as a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Anyways. But no, I really want to know. Can you deal with somebody who's trying to punch you in the face with judo? My problem with Aikido in a lot of ways is not that those moves don't work. I hear people I'm going to twist, those twisting arms and the guy's jumping on purpose. Those men are jumping because it hurts.
Yeah, absolutely.
But can you catch a hand? But judo is not the same. You're not trying to catch a hand. You're grabbing a body. So can you grab a body? Right. You can catch a hand, of course, but can you grab a body while they're trying to punch you and dump them on their head? Obviously, you land on your head on concrete, it's not good.
Right.
But can you do it?
Well, and I guess that's kind of the question. overarching all the martial arts is
Sure.
can you do it? Right?
Can you do it? Yeah.
You know, I have this kind of 3-tiered vetting system for any technique. Number one is it mechanically
Sound.
sound?
Okay.
Like, can you do it, and can you do it safely? Like, does it hurt you to do it? Because obviously, if it puts your own body in jeopardy, it's not a viable technique.
Right.
So that's number one. But just because it's mechanically sound, and most techniques are mechanically sound,
Sure.
doesn't mean it's actually going to be useful. So the next thing is it dynamically viable? And dynamics just basically mean, can it be done in motion?
Right.
Can it be done under variable pressures and whatnot? But then after that is like, can it be done against high pressure resistance?
Exactly.
Like, and that's the ultimate one. But the thing is that if we jump straight to high pressure resistance, we never get a chance to play with technique because there's no time to think technique. Right? And so it begs the question: if the ultimate thing is the pressure testing, why do we need practice technique at all? Well, and for me, that goes back to, is it safe for my body to do this, and can it put me in a position to throw my counter or my attack without reciprocation?
Sure.
It's not that technique is some ultimate thing. It's like playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? You get a +1 because of a piece of equipment or a new skill or something. It just adds to the variability of your roll, gives you a better chance.
Right. I believe that more techniques can be better. I do believe that it slows down your thinking process. In a lot of ways, it's worse.
Yeah.
But you have to build your arsenal of techniques, and then you have to shave them down to what you need. Because you really don't know. A white belt, I walk into somebody's dojo or gym, and he tells me that, he flies on clouds, and, he goes to Kami House. And I don't really know if that's true or not at that level,
Right.
And so you pretty much just have to either respect a friend's opinion or just jump in with both feet and then find out if it's true or not. And that's what new techniques do. You add a technique, you use it, and you realize it's just a derivation of something else. Or you realize that even though they're using it that way, it doesn't actually work that way. It works better this way. There's so many things you learn about martial arts that your teacher doesn't teach you.
Right. In a sense, I kind of hate to quote Bruce Lee, but that whole,
it's fine if you quote Cantonese.
right. But if you go with that whole, take what's useful, reject what's not, add what's your own. And some people say Inosanto said that, but Inosanto said that Bruce Lee said that. It wasn't written down everywhere. Is topic of contention. Anyway, the point is, I look at it kind of like the bodybuilding bulking and cutting cycle, right? You bulk, but as you bulk, there's some useless mass that comes along. It's just how metabolism works. There's not really any way to gain lean mass without gaining some fat mass. And that's true for techniques, And the other thing is that techniques are generally, generalized, to an overall concept. And this is one of my points of skepticism on any technique is it absolutely a zero tolerance system that must be done absolutely precisely? If that's the case, it may not be worth putting in your arsenal in the first place, because the likelihood of the situation providing those precise circumstances is pretty low.
Right.
So while I definitely believe in training techniques, we have to be reasonable about what we're training. That being the case, you got to kind of pick the things that you see have success over and over and over again. And where do we see those successes? We see them in application. So you have to watch a lot of video or participate in a lot of application type scenarios, whether you're talking security cam footage of bouncers and prison guards and police, or if you're talking martial arts competition or other pressure testing scenario drills. Very much less common, but they do take place on occasion. But it's like, find the things that kind of have that commonality of you want to put more on top of that, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having specialized techniques. It's just understanding that specialization means you're going to be limited to specialized circumstances for those things.
Right. Well, that's like Mark Hatmaker's high percentage techniques.
Yeah.
And that's what MMA is basically built on. But my real problem with that is that we really don't know. Like, when you take something like wrestling and the single leg, there is literally 10 times more people practicing wrestling at a high level than there are doing judo. So you see people like, well, judo doesn't work as well as wrestling. And it's like, well, we really don't know that. We need the same amount of people training the same quality of techniques, like the same type of hardcore pressure training that wrestling goes through before we can actually make that evaluation. And the single leg, being that it's completely overtrained in most American wrestling styles like folk style and freestyle, is that it looks hyper effective. And I'm not saying it's not, but there could be other moves in there that are as effective that haven't got the same kind of attention as the single leg. And so we're making evaluations that, gotta add wrestling, gotta add the single leg, when that might not be the best technique, especially because there are certain limiting factors in the street. A single leg is harder to do without smashing your knee on the ground. I'm not saying you can't do it, but traditionally the way it's trained is you drop your knee straight into the earth like a pile driver and you step your other leg forward, keeping your head up, and you grab the leg. Now you can switch to a double leg, you can do a high crotch, you can do all kinds of things from that position. You can even go into a duck under, right? But that knee smashing into the blacktop might disable you.
Right.
It might.
Right. And that brings up this concept in the science world of sample size.
Sure.
Anytime you do a test, right? There are so many tests out there, and they are or studies, or experiments, whatever you want to call them, and they get reported in the headlines and stuff, and then you go and you dig into the research paper and you look at methodology, and then you find out the sample size was 40 people from one state.
Right.
And you go, well, that really doesn't speak for 7 billion people across the world.
Absolutely.
It just is not enough of a sample size. Now, it is a starting point. It is a fantastic starting point that says, well, we've observed something, let's get more into this. Admittedly, funding for research is very difficult to come by.
Right.
But the thing with martial arts research is, if we provide ways for people to compete and test these things, it kind of funds itself through competition, the desire for competition, and we can meta-analyze competition footage, other types of event footage and things like that, and it's something. But you're right. In the U.S., there are a significant, overabundance of wrestlers over judo players.
Oh,
so,
yeah. I think worldwide. I think worldwide. I mean, it seems like a lot of people do judo, but when you look at how many high school kids are doing wrestling, the number is amazing. And so we have a sample size, but we have gene pool. So we're having a huge variation in skill sets, a huge variation in backgrounds, a huge variation in genetic profiles.
Right.
So you're going to have the odds of you having a world-class practitioner are much higher in wrestling than in judo.
Right.
And so it's not a fair comparison.
Weightlifting. And one of the things they were talking about why the U.S. hasn't had any champion weightlifters in the Olympics in decades is because we have like a few thousand candidates nationwide to train and go for the Olympics, whereas in countries like Russia and China, kids are selected from extremely early on, and you have thousands and thousands and thousands of them going through this selection process, possibly millions of them going through this selection process from the time they're in grade school to weed out the ones who are gifted versus the ones who have drive for it, blah, 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 and on and on. So by the time they actually get to competition, they've got that top 1% cream of the crop. Whereas here in the U.S., right, things are a little more volitional, which is fine. But but when you give people choice, they may not choose to do the thing that they're very good at.
Yeah. Obviously.
And that's fine. I'm 100% for freedom, but it just means that we're going to have a more difficult time getting those sample sizes up to get to that top of the crop kind of mentality. And I think you're going to see that in the martial arts too. There are so many more boxers than anything else. Of course, boxing punches work better than every other punch because we have so many people out there practicing them and using them and testing them and doing it.
Oh yeah.
And you can see this for any.
The average kickboxer, world champion kickboxer has 10, 15 fights behind them, maybe 20.
Right.
The average professional boxer world champion has 100 fights behind them.
Right.
It's amazing. The amount of gene pool, the difference in the amount of people, the amount of hours, millions of punches versus hundreds of thousands of punches.
Right.
Literally.
And so I always scoff when when people in the forums on the web say things like, well, clearly modern sport arts are better than everything else, and it's like, well, that's not that clear. It's just what's popular.
Right.
And well, I'm not denying the efficacy of those things. I mean, how many reports do we see of 70-year-old Marine boxing champ taking down an armed robber or something, right? These things have their ways of working out, but again, that's in his toolbox because it was popular enough to make it to his practice.
Right.
Right. Look, the military has a long-standing tradition of boxing and wrestling in the military. In the last 20 years, not even 20 years, they've added jiu-jitsu to their combatants program, and until that changes, whenever that happens, if it ever happens, you'll see an increase in jiu-jitsu culture as well, and the same thing over and over and over again. Back to the weightlifting analogy, right? Back in the 70s, all of a sudden things started changing when you had Nautilus machines and everybody going crazy for endurance exercises. It's not actually any better. In fact, there's a lot of arguments against it, but that's what got popular. So that's what every magazine is filled with, every workout DVD is filled with, is these endurance and bodybuilding fitness routine workouts. And it's fine. It's not that they don't work. It's just that there may be other things out there that are better, and there's some good arguments for other things being better. Fillmore.
Fillmore doesn't go through, does it?
I don't know.
According to this, we got to go down to Van Buren and then up to Fillmore, because we already passed Fillmore, I think.
Okay. That's fine.
So, one of the other things I really want to know is, I don't know if anybody can answer this, is judo biased for shorter people?
That's a really good question. And that brings up a thought that I've had more than once, and that's how many of these traditional arts, whether you want to say they're effective or not, how many of these traditional arts have built-in artifacts because of being enclosed in a certain culture.
Sure.
Right? Shortness being one of them, right? Asians are classically shorter than, Northern Europeans, Africans, pretty much everybody, right? They're just about the shortest, continental population on Earth, short of certain locations and all that. So, because if you're looking at shorter, you're looking at lower center of gravity. Shorter people generally have better relative strength, so they can actually be weaker, but pound for pound stronger,
right? And
be more better advantage.
Yeah, better mechanical advantage. Yes.
Yeah. So, very, very good question.
So, this is where I'm coming from. I was in a competition a while back, and one of my coaches, does a little bit of judo, and like cross trains in judo, and he kept saying, get your hips lower, which is not what I normally do. And I was trying to get my hips lower, And the other guy, listening to my coach, was also trying to get his hips lower. We're about the same size, and it was a huge struggle. And I realized if he had been shorter than me, he would have got his hips below mine, and he would have had a better center of gravity for a hip toss. Now, there's other types of throws. You can throw off the ankle, you can throw off the head or the shoulders area, and I don't believe those are as advantageous to be short. Maybe it's even better to be tall. But most of judo throws, at least from my limited knowledge, tend to be on getting your hips lower so you can sweep, using the hips or the upper thighs, and grabbing the back a lot of times in the gi. And I feel like that, I know there's other moves, but I feel like that a large amount of judo moves are biased towards short people. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Most people are shorter than me. So, it would be a good martial art for most people, I would think.
Right. Yeah, that's a perfectly valid question. It's and again, looking at Japanese culture, right? Japanese culture is very, very, or was at that time, very isolated culture. They did not have as much dealing with the outside world as even China. They did have some. It's not like they were 100% isolated. We're talking like the 1700s, and what Commodore Perry opened up, trade routes into Japan or something like that. So it's not like we're talking about 100% isolation, but they are very proud to be Japanese, and they want to do things their way.
Yeah.
And while that can be commendable, it also means that
down that way, right?
Yeah.
I think I just missed it. Yeah, yep. That did not look like a street to me.
Yeah, 1929B. Yeah. So anyway, when you're looking at
there's a guard.
When you're looking at things coming from isolated pockets, you have to question how much cross exposure did they get to other cultures. And I know I'm a little biased towards Chinese martial arts, but you look at the Chinese, and it's like not only were they constantly at war with each other, but being in the major landmass, they had a lot of influence from India, Mongolia. They themselves influenced Korea, and and so when you look at that, all that cross training, and the fact that different empires at different times had stake in the Chinese landmass, you get a lot of cross pollination going on, which makes the concept of why the Chinese have so many varieties of styles make sense.
Oh yeah.
Whereas the Japanese, right, you have a lot of variations on a single style. And that's really unfair to say, because I don't know that much about the Japanese, but from my limited knowledge, what we see is that you basically have different clans' takes on jiu-jitsu, and that's it. And judo comes from that. The Japanese didn't get karate until they
that's
took
true.
it from.
And that's funny because that's what everybody thinks is a Japanese martial art. It's really not a Japanese martial art.
Right.
It is, but it was adopted.
Right.
I love Japanese culture. I love Japanese martial arts. I currently don't practice a Japanese martial art, but I still have a lot of good things, good associations, and I just really appreciate the style. It's their martial arts, their food, their culture. It's all it's very antiseptic. It's very stylized. It's very overtly masculine and feminine at the same time. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, and I like some of that. You can't really live this day and age without appreciating some Japanese culture, but by the same token, it's just there are so many other things that I appreciate that take precedence.
Absolutely. So, well, I love Chinese martial arts. There's so many, it's hard to say a single quality about Chinese martial arts.
There isn't. It runs the gamut.
It does. It pretty much, pretty much, I mean, I can't prove this, but I'm going to say that every single martial art technique is contained in Chinese martial arts. And I can't prove that, but there's just so many styles and so many moves, and it would be hard pressed to find a move that wasn't originally used in a Chinese martial art.
My only caveat on that is I have never seen any significant Chinese groundwork.
Sure.
But that's not to say there isn't any. It's just that I haven't seen it.
I understand because I haven't either, but I believe that there must have been and it got lost.
It's entirely possible, but like Kano said in his writings and discourse, back in the early 1900s, the old warrior way was not to go to the ground because you were just trying to put the other guy there so you could shank him with your sword.
Which is 100% makes sense.
So,
but when you are on the ground, you need something.
You need something.
And so I would think somebody would have invented stuff for that.
I would think there would at least be like sweeps and get-ups, right?
At least, yeah.
So, and people look at Chin Na and they're like, oh, it's just pressure points. No. It's locks and chokes, and it's every form. Like, it is such a generic term meaning to seize and lock. That's literally any hold. Any hold that you can possibly imagine. That it does include pressure points, and we can argue the validity of that, but it's literally encompasses the entire game of submissions.
Well, not that saying Bruce Lee encompasses most, if not all, of Chinese martial arts, but, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but the one where they're in Hong Kong and they're in the school and they have to fight all the Japanese people.
So, Fist of Fury, right?
Fist of Fury. There's at least 3 ground techniques in that movie that either him or the other students of the Chinese school use. So,
right.
It's a hint that maybe that those came from something historical, and maybe there's more. Yeah. We've lost a lot of martial arts because of politics.
Right.
China's especially had problems with that.
China's had a lot of problems with that. And then, how much have we lost, elsewhere? When...
blending and modernization ruins things.
And then when political and religious regimes take over a country, they often get rid of all the hints of the previous culture, whatever it was. And, as a means of kind of, it's like scent marking, like what, bears and dogs do, right? They're just pissing on the tree, and the problem is they're wiping out a significant piece of history.
And teachers that don't want to show real techniques or the ultimate forms or even forms at all because they're too deadly or they shouldn't be passed on. How many things have gotten lost?
Right.
I'm sure some of them are good. I'm sure some of them it's fine that we lost them, but we lost a lot of good things. We had to have. So.
And I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, "Oh yeah, my teacher wasn't shown everything from his teacher, and his teacher died." Well, I mean, some of that is how much is that, stylistic mysticism,
right?
But then some of that is also like, why didn't he teach him that?
Yeah, and also sometimes though those ultimate techniques are either BS.
Yeah.
Or they're cool, but really not that functional.
Right. Like, here's how you pop somebody's eyeball inside their skull.
Right.
Okay, great.
Thanks for that.
I can think of 300 other things that I would do first that would probably end the fight without doing that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like, just because you have the most powerful punch in the world doesn't mean you can hit anybody with it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that goes for any secret and devastating technique as well.
Absolutely.
It may not be BS, but it might not be real applicable.
Sure. I mean, a lot of times you learn the basics, then you learn the intermediate, then you learn the advanced, and then when you're ready for mastery, you start learning the basics again, because now you're putting subtlety. I get a lot of... I'll get a lot of trouble for that word. You're putting subtle moves, but it's really also timing, understanding body mechanics. I mean, you're really using them better. But I think subtlety, beginners don't really understand what that means. Like, when I punch you as a white belt, I'm moving my hand in a gross general direction towards your face with very little understanding of what I'm doing, where I'm doing it.
Right.
I could be damaging myself more than you. I really don't know. I'm just swinging, and I'm hoping I don't get hit, and I'm leaning back. I mean, it's always really an ugly affair. But as a person that has gone beyond the basics and well beyond the higher level techniques, maybe I'm leaning my weight correctly. So now I'm putting a lot more force, or maybe it's not force because that's what a beginner does. Maybe it's torque. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting more knockout force, really.
Right.
Maybe I'm getting, I'm doing less damage to my own body. Maybe I'm conserving energy. Maybe I'm doing it while I protect myself because I'm a half an inch to the left, and now your punch either can't hit me or can't hit me with power. And a beginner just wouldn't understand that subtlety.
Right. And I think by and large that's exactly what you're looking at for advanced techniques.
Mm-hmm.
It's never, in my experience, like working out with black belts and stuff, it's never that they're doing techniques that aren't present in the earlier levels.
Sure.
It's that they're doing those techniques at a higher level.
Sure.
So, okay, great example. There's, and I'm kind of like the anti-ninja guy, but there's a lot of discussion on ninjas and stuff.
Sure.
And I've heard tell that a lot of the secret ninja stuff is all magic spells and stuff. It's not like it's actual Japanese mysticism, like literally, legitimately actual Japanese mysticism.
Okay.
Not some code for poisons or covert techniques, like just legit magic. Well, if that's your ultimate level, then I don't need it.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, we can argue about magic, but I don't buy into that stuff, and it's not.
The average Westerner is not going to care about that.
And the other thing is, even if it was doing what it's saying it's doing, how many lower level things that are less expensive to me as a practitioner are going to come first in line to get me there.
Right.
Like, I'm not fighting in guerrilla warfare. I'm not
Sure.
I'm not going on covert missions.
Sure.
I train and I teach and I fight because I'm a human and I'm a caveman, and that's what I like to do.
It's so good for us. It's part of our psyche. We either watch sports to get our fix, or we do martial arts, you know, or some people even play sports. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Most people just sit on the couch. But,
Right.
I mean, every martial art, I don't want to say every martial art, but most martial arts have that level of mysticism. Yeah. Capoeira, you do some kind of thing where you make your body impervious. So you do like, one arm at a time maybe, and now swords can't cut it, and at some point your entire body is impervious,
Right.
And, and maybe you even learn to do magic powers and fly, or something. I mean, those legends exist inside of styles that are not even Asian,
Right.
So, and like I said, a lot of that was included in Irish martial arts, and I'm sure lots of other ones that I just don't know anything about. So,
Right.
But still, we probably lost a lot.
Yeah.
Who knows? Some of it was probably black magic. Some of it, though, was probably useful. So.
Yeah. I'm sure we've lost more than we know. I would even wager that we've lost more than we have.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of it, 2 arms, 2 legs, a body, and a head. There's only so many ways a person can move, and ultimately it comes down to like body structure, force production, timing, and positioning relative to your opponents.
And that's on the martial side. On the art side, though, there's grace and style alone, and there's other values. I mean, that's why you may like a Chinese martial art versus a Japanese martial art.
Yeah.
I mean, punches are punches.
Yeah. Well, it's a buffet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't eat everything at the buffet because I don't like everything at the buffet.
Sure.
It's not saying the other stuff's not good. I mean, it's a buffet. It's
Sure.
probably not good food, but But the thing is, it does come down to flavor, style points.
Sure.
Heck, even Kanda combat, the French cane fighting, awards style points.
Well, yeah, it is a highly unique martial art.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to watch. I would love to learn.